If you think night drives are peaceful, wait until you hear this. There's something about being alone on a highway after midnight that feels both comforting and wrong at the same time. You know the feeling. The world is quiet. The air is still. And the only sound is the hum of your tires against asphalt. For a while, it almost feels like you're the last person alive on Earth. The glow of your headlights cuts a narrow tunnel through the dark, and beyond that tunnel is just emptiness. People like to romanticize it. They'll say driving at night clears your head, or that it's the perfect time to think. But the truth? It's also the perfect time to realize how vulnerable you really are. Out there, in the middle of nowhere, you don't get neighbors or witnesses. If something were to happen on those empty roads, there's no one to hear you scream, no one to help, no one even to notice. And the strange part is, I'm not even talking about the obvious dangers. Not drunk drivers, not deer leaping into your lane. I'm talking about the other kind of danger, the kind that makes you check your backseat without knowing why. The kind that makes you swear you saw something standing by the side of the road, until you blink and it's gone. Some people laugh it off. It's just your imagination, but I know better. Because I've lived it. And if you keep listening, so will you. Collected 3 stories. 3 true accounts of night drives that turned from ordinary to horrifying in ways no one can fully explain. Each one is more disturbing than the last. One of them was quietly buried, the details scrubbed away as if they never happened. Another still leaves seasoned investigators shaking their heads because to this day, no explanation has ever surfaced. And the third is why I don't drive alone at night anymore. You may think you're safe behind the wheel, windows rolled up, doors locked, headlights pushing forward into the unknown. But what if the real danger isn't outside the car? What if it's already sitting beside you? What if it's following you? Or worse, what if you've taken a wrong turn onto a road that was never supposed to exist in the first place? So buckle up, because once I start, you won't want to stop listening. And once you hear these stories, you'll never look at an empty night drive the same way again. It was sometime after 1 in the morning when I saw him. The highway was almost empty that night. One of those stretches of road where you start to feel like you've slipped out of the real world. The kind of silence where even your own breathing sounds too loud, and the steady hum of the tires becomes a hypnotic rhythm you can't escape. My dashboard lights glowed a soft green. My fuel gauge sat at half, and the only company I had was the faint static of a radio station I hadn't bothered to change. That's when I saw the shape. At first, I thought it was a shadow cast from the trees. But then my headlights caught movement. A figure standing on the shoulder of the road with one arm raised. A hitchhiker. Now, I'm not the kind of person who usually stops for strangers in the middle of nowhere. You've heard the stories, people robbed, killed, worse. But something about him looked different. He wasn't menacing. He was just standing there, dressed in dark clothes, backpack slung over one shoulder, his face pale in the beam of my headlights. He looked tired, desperate, and I remember thinking, wouldn't I want someone to stop if it were me? So against my better judgment, I slowed down. The gravel crunched as I pulled to the shoulder. He approached without hesitation, opened the passenger side door and slid in as if he'd been waiting for me all along. "Thanks," he said, his voice low, almost hoarse. "Been out here a long time." I nodded, gripping the wheel a little tighter. "No problem. Where are you headed?" He gave me a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just up the road." That was vague, but I didn't press him. We drove in silence for a while. The only sounds were the engine's low hum and the occasional whoosh of night air. When a rare car passed in the opposite lane, I kept sneaking glances at him. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with hair that hung into his eyes and clothes that looked outdated somehow, like something from another decade. Finally, I tried to break the silence. "So where are you coming from?" He shifted, staring out the window. "Back there," he murmured. "Too far to walk." "Not safe either," I frowned. "Not safe?" He didn't answer right away. Then he turned his head, fixing me with a stare that felt heavier than it should have. "You know what's out there, don't you?" My skin prickled. I gave a nervous laugh. Can't say I do. Just trees and empty road, far as I can tell. That's when he said something that froze me. Not just trees. Not for you. The way he said it, flat like a fact, and made my stomach knot. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I forced a chuckle. Well, let's hope it's nothing worse than raccoons. He smiled at that, but it wasn't reassuring. It was almost pitying. The miles dragged on. I noticed little things. The way he never blinked when the headlights of oncoming cars swept over him. The way his hands rested motionless in his lap, too still, like he was holding himself in place. At first I was relieved to have company. By the end I wished I was alone. We passed a faded road sign and he leaned forward slightly. "This part's dangerous," he said. I glanced at him. "Dangerous how?" He tilted his head. "Haven't you heard about the accident?" My grip tightened on the wheel. "What accident?" He smiled faintly as if he knew something I didn't. "You'll see." A cold sweat trickled down my neck. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I knew it with the same certainty you feel when you realize you're being watched. I forced myself to focus on the road, counting the seconds until I could drop him off. But when I finally asked where exactly he wanted to get out, he didn't answer. I turned my head at him and my heart nearly stopped. The seat beside me was empty. I slammed the brakes so hard the car fishtailed. My chest heaved, my hands shook. I whipped my head around, scanning the road, the back seat, the darkness outside. He was gone. Completely gone, and yet something remained. On the passenger seat lay an object I hadn't noticed before. A small, worn leather wallet. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Inside was an old driver's license, the plastic cracked, the photo faded. But the name was still legible. I wish I could tell you it was a stranger's name, that it meant nothing. But when I saw it, my stomach dropped into ice. It was my father's name.
The problem is, my father had died 10 years ago. I threw the wallet onto the floor, slammed the car back into gear, and drove faster than I've ever driven in my life. The road blurred, headlights streaking across my windshield, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. And when I finally got home, shaking and pale, I checked the passenger seat again. The wallet was gone. I told myself I imagined it, that I was tired, hallucinating, but deep down I know better. I know what I saw, and I know I wasn't alone on that road. I thought that was the last time I'd ever see something like that, but I was wrong, because the next story is worse, far worse. They say paranoia is just your brain tricking you, that most of the time the danger you think is there isn't real. But what if it is? What if the feeling of being followed isn't just in your head? It happened 2 years ago on a night I'll never forget. I'd been working late, later than I should have, and by the time I hit the road it was past midnight. The streets were nearly empty, the kind of dead quiet where traffic lights cycle pointlessly for no one. I was tired but not exhausted, at least not yet. My car's interior smelled faintly of old coffee and air freshener, the dash glowing a dim orange. The hum of the tires was steady, almost soothing. For a while, everything was normal. Then I noticed the headlights. They appeared in my rearview mirror like any other car, 2 perfect circles of light cresting over the hill behind me. At first I didn't think much of it. Highways at night aren't completely empty. But what got my attention was the way those lights stayed locked behind me. I changed lanes. So did they. I slowed down a little. They slowed down too. Okay, I muttered to myself, trying to laugh it off. Coincidence, that's all. But it didn't feel like coincidence. The car was sleek and dark, maybe black, though in the shifting glow of my mirrors it was hard to tell. No visible plate, no bumper stickers, nothing to distinguish it. Just an anonymous black shape perfectly mirroring me. My heart rate ticked up. I tested it again. Took an exit I never usually took. A random off-ramp into a stretch of back road lined with silent gas stations and shuttered shops. I rolled through a green light, then another. The car followed. Every move I made, it copied. Not too close, not too far, just near enough that I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles pale against the leather. The streetlights flickered overhead, each one briefly illuminating the dark paint of the car before letting it sink back into shadow. "All right," I whispered. "Let's see what you want." I turned sharply into a residential neighborhood. Empty streets, rows of houses, dark and quiet. I zigzagged through side roads, doubling back, circling blocks. But no matter what I did, the car was always there. It didn't make sense. Why me? Why here? I felt my throat go dry, the weight of something crawling down my spine. This wasn't random. It couldn't be. Finally, desperate, I spotted a 24-hour gas station up ahead, fluorescent lights buzzing, one lone attendant inside half asleep behind the counter. Safety. At least that's what I told myself. I pulled in fast, tires squealing on the concrete. The car behind me slowed, idled for a second at the curb. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Then, without warning, it rolled forward. I braced myself, ready for it to turn in after me, to box me in under the harsh lights of the station. But it didn't. It drove past. No hesitation, no glance, no acknowledgement. Just slid by like a shadow dissolving into the night. I sat there shaking, engine still running, unable to move. The attendant glanced up lazily from behind the glass, giving me a confused look. I got out, forcing myself to act normal, to breathe. "Long night?" the attendant asked, voice muffled through the glass. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You see that black car?" He blinked at me, frowning. "What car?" I turned, gesturing to the street. But it was empty. Just silence and the low buzz of the fluorescent lights. "It was right there," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "It's been following me." The attendant gave me a half-hearted shrug. "Haven't seen anything." "Maybe you need some rest," I wanted to argue, but what was the point? To him, I probably looked like a jittery stranger talking nonsense at 1 in the morning. I stayed there longer than I needed to, buying gas I didn't need, pacing, waiting for the courage to get back on the road. Finally, I climbed back into my car, locked the doors, and told myself it was over. Just paranoia. Just my imagination running wild. The drive home was quiet. No headlights trailing me, no black car lurking in the distance. By the time I pulled into my neighborhood, the tension in my chest had eased. I told myself I'd laugh about it in the morning, but when I pulled into my driveway, I froze. There it was, the same black car parked across the street. No driver, no movement. Just sitting there, dark and silent, like it had been waiting. My breath caught in my throat. I killed my headlights, but I couldn't bring myself to shut off the engine. My hands trembled against the wheel. I stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for a door to open, for someone to step out, for anything to happen. Nothing did. It just sat there, patient, watching. Finally, I forced myself inside. Every creak of the floorboards felt like thunder. Every shadow stretched too long. I couldn't sleep. Not really. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling.
Ears straining for sounds outside. And sometime around 4 in the morning I heard it. The low,
steady hum of an engine starting. By the time I dared to peek through the blinds, the street was empty again. I don't know who was in that car. I don't know why they chose me. But sometimes, late at night, when I catch a glimpse of headlights in my rearview mirror, I can't help but wonder if it's back. And if it is, how long it plans to follow me this time. Because if you think that story's unsettling, just wait. The next one, it didn't just follow me. It took me somewhere I was never meant to go. One wrong turn changed everything. It started out so ordinary, so boringly, painfully ordinary, that I never could have predicted what was about to happen. I'd made that drive dozens of times before, the long stretch back from a client's house in a town I hardly ever visited, back to my own place 2 hours away. I was tired. My eyes burned with that dull ache you get when you've been awake too long. The hum of the highway had turned hypnotic. That's when the GPS spoke up. Faster route available. Save 18 minutes. Would you like to reroute? The cheerful synthetic voice startled me. I glanced at the screen. Sure enough, a purple line snaked off the main highway, curving through side roads I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a second, then tapped. Yes. Why not? I wanted to get home. 18 minutes was 18 minutes. The exit came up quickly, a ramp I barely noticed before. My headlights caught the reflective green sign, though now I couldn't for the life of me remember what the name was. Something strange, almost foreign. I shrugged it off, turned onto the ramp, and let the GPS guide me. At first, nothing felt unusual. Just another state road, empty and quiet. The painted lines faded. The asphalt cracked in places. Trees rose, on either side, branches knitting together into a dark canopy overhead. I rolled the windows down to fight the growing sleepiness, expecting the chirp of crickets or the rustle of wind. But there was nothing. The silence was absolute. Not a single insect, not a whisper of breeze. Just the steady growl of my own engine. I told myself it was just rural. Some places are like that. Empty, lifeless. But the further I drove, the more wrong it felt. The road began to narrow. The paint faded until the center line vanished altogether. The street signs looked unfamiliar, their shapes wrong, their symbols more like scratches than letters. I slowed down, squinting at one as my headlights washed over it. The characters weren't English. They weren't even from an alphabet I recognized. I frowned, my pulse ticking faster. Weird, I muttered. The GPS chirped again. Continue straight for 3 miles. I obeyed, though my hands tightened on the wheel. The trees grew denser, their branches arching so tightly overhead that the stars vanished. I realized with a cold shiver that I hadn't seen another car in nearly half an hour. No headlights behind me. No glow ahead. Just me, cocooned in darkness. Then I noticed the time. When I'd taken the turn, it was 12:47 a.m., but now my dashboard clock read 3:12. I hadn't been driving that long. I couldn't have been. Yet I had no memory of those missing hours. My stomach twisted. I tapped the GPS screen, trying to zoom out, but the map was blank. The purple route floated in an empty gray void. No towns, no landmarks, nothing. Just a thin line leading deeper into nowhere. That's when I saw him. A figure, standing by the side of the road. I slammed the brakes, my car jerking to a stop. My high beams washed over him, tall, thin, dressed in clothes so dark they seemed to absorb the light. His face was pale, too pale, his eyes hidden in shadow. He raised one hand slowly, as if to wave me down. My instinct screamed, "Don't stop." But against all reason, I rolled the window down a crack. "Hey," I called out, my voice shaking. "You okay?" The figure tilted his head. When he spoke, his voice was low and dry, like dead leaves scraping across asphalt. "Do you know where you are?" The words hit me like ice water. "No," I admitted before I could stop myself. I don't think I do." He stepped closer. Too close. I smelled something metallic, sharp, like rust or old blood. His pale face leaned toward the gap in my window. "You shouldn't be here." Every instinct screamed at me to go. I slammed the window shut, threw the car into gear, and floored it. The tires shrieked as I tore away, my heart hammering in my throat. In the rearview mirror, the figure just stood there, motionless, fading into the dark until he was gone. But I couldn't escape the feeling that I hadn't left him behind, that somehow he was still with me. The road twisted and warped. Signs with impossible symbols blurred past. A tunnel of trees closed in so tightly, I thought the branches would shatter my windshield. My GPS repeated the same line over and over in its cheerful voice. Continue straight, continue straight, continue straight. Finally, after what felt like forever, I burst out onto a wider road. Streetlights glowed overhead. The stars returned. And just like that, I recognized where I was, a highway less than 10 miles from my home. I pulled over, shaking, sweat dripping down my neck. My dashboard clock now read 6:45 a.m. Somehow, I'd lost 6 hours. When I stumbled into my house, my reflection in the mirror made me freeze. There was a thin, raw scar across my collarbone, one I knew hadn't been there before. I don't remember getting it. I don't remember stopping. But sometimes when the house is quiet and the radio in my kitchen is on low, I swear I hear it whisper, not music, not static, a voice. Do you know where you are? I'll never know where that road truly led. And maybe you shouldn't want to, so now you've heard them. 3 drives, 3 nights, 3 encounters that left scars deeper than tire marks on asphalt. And the question I asked you at the beginning still lingers, doesn't it? Have you ever driven at night and felt someone watching? Felt that strange pull in your gut, that instinct that tells you something's just a little off, even though everything looks perfectly normal, because that's the trick of it. Night drives are normal. They lull you into that false sense of security. Empty highways, the glow of your dashboard, maybe some quiet music to keep you awake. The world outside is nothing but trees and stars and shadows. It feels safe. Almost peaceful, almost. But if you've listened this far, you know better. You know what I know. That peace can be a mask. And behind it, something else. Something watching, waiting, following. Think back to the hitchhiker who wasn't there. A lonely figure on the side of the road. A face too pale, words that cut deeper than they should. He left me with more than a chill. He left me with something personal. Something that tied back to my own life in a way that still makes my skin crawl. You can tell yourself you'd never stop for a stranger, but what if they already know your name? What if they already know who you are, or the black car? Maybe you've seen headlights in your mirror and thought nothing of it. Just another driver, right? But how many turns does it take before you realize it's no coincidence? How many blocks before you notice they're not trying to pass? They're waiting for you. And when they finally vanish, when you breathe that sigh of relief, are you sure they're really gone? Because sometimes the moment you let your guard down is the moment you find them parked across the street from your home, and then there's the road. The one the GPS shouldn't have shown me. The one that doesn't appear on any map. The one that swallowed hours of my life and left me with something I can't explain. Something that marked me forever. I don't know where it leads. I don't know who and or what and was waiting for me there. And I don't think I ever want to find out. The scariest part? These weren't isolated. They weren't just stories. They feel connected, like threads leading somewhere bigger, somewhere darker. A web of roads and shadows that stretch further than any of us realize. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I wonder if I've only scratched the surface. So the next time you're out there at night behind the wheel, lulled into that false sense of safety by the hum of your tires and the steady glow of your headlights, remember this. You're not as alone as you think. Check your mirrors. Look at the shoulder of the road. Glance once more at the map on your screen. Because you might not like what you see. And if you ever notice a black car trailing you, don't assume it's just coincidence. Don't assume you're alone. I still have more stories. Things I haven't told you yet. Things I've kept locked away because speaking them out loud makes them too real. Maybe one day I'll share them. Maybe one day you'll hear the rest. But for now, let's leave it here. Enjoy your night drive. And if you make it home safely, consider yourself lucky because not everyone does.